Hi guys, this is Rad Fox, and this video is going to be about replacing the clutch in a 2015 GTI Performance Pack. As you know, the car is a Stage 2 APR kit on it, and the stock clutch started slipping, wasn't holding. So I looked around on the internet, and I decided on the HS Tuning RSR kit. This next little short clip shows the car accelerating up to about 4,000 RPM. Watch the tachometer, and then all of a sudden it just shoots from like 4,000 to 4,800. That's the clutch slipping, and that's why I'm replacing the clutch. Okay, so here's the HS Tuning website. So you can see the phone number and all that. This is the clutch that I put in the car. You can see it's called the RSR Clutch kit. I bought the transmission hardware kit for $49.99 to go along with this. This kit does not come with a clutch alignment tool. You can buy that here on their website. Or if you have a generic tool like I do, you can use that to align the disc. This clutch is, I believe, actually out of an Audi RS, and so this company here, HS Tuning, has found that this pressure plate fits on the GTI, and it provides more holding force. So they kit it all up and offer it for $1,000. So this is it. So you know where I got that, and if you're interested in buying it for yourself. All right, so here we go. Here's a look at the jack stands and jacks. That blue quick jack or whatever doesn't even let high enough, so I ain't gonna use it. But basically, I've got to use the factory jack to get the car up high enough to get the heavy jack, high lift jack underneath the car on one side, jack it up. I don't go all the way up the first time. Get the jack stands underneath it, just get it up, partially up to about where I want it. Don't go all the way. So I'm going to jack up the front and then go to the back of the car and then jack the back of the car up, and then come back to the front and then jack up the front. So that's basically what you're seeing. And for those of you wondering, I use those tennis shoes just to give some cushion on the top of those jack stands. Those jack stands are a little bit wide. I've got to turn them at an angle so that they don't hit the painted underside of the car, and it just makes it so that nothing gets scratched. So yeah, I'm taking up the rest of it in the front. And, the car has to get up high enough to obviously drop the transmission out underneath. It really needs enough room, for me anyways, to be able to put the transmission on my chest and lift it up into the car, or vice versa. Set it on my chest and lower. So here's just a look of where all the jack stands are at. The jack's still there at the moment. But obviously with the jack stands, these positions here, you can shake the car back. Now that bar back there, I don't know how much weight that can really hold, so I was very careful, not trying to crank a lot of weight on that bar. So you can see here, I'm just removing that intake pipe clamp. There's another one down there, a hose clamp type. Just loosen that. You can see the hose is pushing out. Put something in that turbo inlet. You don't want anything falling in there when you're working on the car. then not know about it till you start up the car. You'd be in a lot of trouble. Okay, so that front air dam, really, yeah, there's two screws that are holding it to the car. If you loosen those up, you can pop that air dam. One screw on each side. Because that air box actually fits up underneath and into it. You sort of see that the air dam, yeah, comes out first, and that the air box was plugged up underneath it. The air box just pulls out. There's just some rubber bushings on it. So obviously I'm removing the battery with a crescent that's too large, but I was very careful not to damage the nuts on the terminals.
Should use a driver this time.
And there's the clamp that holds the battery in. You got to take it all the way out. It doesn't slide at all like on some cars.
Oops.
So completely take that bolt all the way out. Pull that clamp out. Move it back to that second position there. You can see the thread hole there. Bracket obviously removed. You can slide the battery a little bit towards the front of the car.
Okay, this one.
Okay, so here I'm showing a couple of screws. There's a couple more in there too. You'll see that you have to remove to get the battery tray out. The battery tray is completely in the way, so you can take that out.
Is that freaking bolted right there? Oh man.
There's also some battery cables there, some other electrical connectors and cables that have a little crimp clamp that's holding them to that tray. They need to also be aware of those, sort of gently pry and pop those off.
Yeah, wait, one more. Here.
Another screw holding the tray down.
Take this.
And you can see one of the tips there.
This one.
Another one there. Another bolt tray. And there's also another cable clipped up.
Oh, one more clip. One more clip right there.
One more.
There's another fucking one right there. Clip right there, holding this harness.
Alright, it just looks right out after all that. So the next thing I'm working on here is obviously the shifter clips. That one's pretty easy. You can see you can just pry it off. That next mechanism too, same thing. I got behind it, just pried it against itself there, and it just sort of popped off.
That's that.
Then the next thing here is I'm removing that nut off of that lever, and it's splined But I know on other cars where I had done this before, I end up putting the lever back on, you know, with a couple teeth off, and then the shifter linkage was all messed up. So this time here, I marked it, marked the actual lever, and then the spline shaft that's coming up in there, making sure that I could realign it exactly the way how I found it.
Okay.
When I put it back together, there's a little plastic clip on there, and you'll see when I start prying on it, it shoots out. Try not to break it. It's pretty thin plastic. You need to lift on it from both ends at the same time. That's why it shoots off. Spread it.
Oops,
on both
there
sides.
it went.
So you can sort of pry that up a little bit, wiggle it around, it'll pop off. Put the nut back on so I don't lose it. Now to the back bracket for the linkage. 2 visible bolts right there, and then 1 up underneath, sideways to those 2. It's actually the bolt that's up underneath there is actually one of the bolts that holds the transmission to the
Okay, let's not lose these 2 bolts. These 2 bolts here. There's one more
see
right
it
there.
right there. So I just pulled that out to the side. I was looking for somewhere to put it, so grab some zip ties and zip tie that up onto the brake booster.
Hey, let this go here real quick. Nothing here. Okay, perfect.
Okay, so there's a neutral switch down there on the side of the transmission. I'll click that. Now here I went and decided I was going to take the wheels off now. Hold the wheel, don't let it fall off, otherwise it'll get scratched. Off. Okay, so I'm looking at the ground terminal of the starter. I'll go ahead and take that off. But I think yeah, that wasn't too hard. That actually isn't too hard. But at some point here, I decided to take off that clutch bleeder valve. It's just in the way to get knocked around too much. Now for that clutch line, that bleeder valve, the dealer, not the dealer, but the manufacturer, Volkswagen, suggests you use a line clamp. I didn't have one at the time. I bought one. I think I got one for like $5 or $6 at Napa. They had them on sale, like China or something.
If I take
But
the lower thing, just leave
it pinches the line, it squeezes it,
I'm gonna take this one off.
and you know, obviously keeps the fluid from leaking out when you have the line disconnection. Because as soon as you pop off that clip, pull that bleeder, it just starts leaking out. Now I took that line and put a rag over the end of it, and then I zip tied that line up as high as I could in the engine compartment to keep it the leak
This off, I swear to God.
minimized. But I still ended up,
Yeah, fuck it.
gosh, I don't know.
All right,
I
I'm
still
gonna pull
ended up
this one
having
too.
several ounces of brake fluid back in. You can see there's just a little clip. That simple, man. That thing's O-ring. That's a really nice setup. So interesting, actually, because as you see, that's just a bleeder, right? So down inside the transmission bell housing, there's no clutch fork. The slave cylinder and the throwout bearing are all one piece. It's pretty interesting. I've never seen one of those before. So yeah, you can already see I've got this red rag right here. That's
that's pretty good.
It's got the bleeder tied up in there. I took out the top starter bolt.
So, this is a lift
there's
point. We need to pop
these plastic covers
that off, and then here
on
we're gonna
and that little pin right there on the lift points for the engine, hoist, for the engine cradle. So you got to pry that up. I actually broke the little tab pulling that off, but it still fits on and works on. It's pretty tight. You can see there, that's how I broke it. So try not to do that. That I just squeezed from underneath, pulled it up, and it popped out. So that's where I'm going to hook the chains up. Now that's another thing too. I bought that engine cradle from ECS Tuning. That was the cheaper one they had. They had one that has some extra support bars on it. This thing right here was awesome. This was so cool. Usually I use a jack and a block of wood, and it's really sort of half-ass. But this, having this tool now, makes it so easy. So I tried positioning the chains a couple different ways there. I ended up having to find some bolts and some nuts to go with them to, lock the chain. Right there, I thought I could just loop the chain around that bracket, but when I started looking at it closer, I could see that when the chain is tightened, that it would squeeze the wire harness that runs right there. So I end up unwrapping that and then using the bolt and just going through the actual hole. And there you can see I'm looped around. And that's not the way to do it. Do it like that.
Put a number 3
there
bolt in here
with the bolt and a nut, and make sure it's strong enough. That was a number 3. I believe it's strong enough.
Okay, I can't do this.
And right there,
I'm seeing that this is going to pinch into this cable harness right here when it pulls back into it. So I'm going to have to find a bolt.
You don't want harness problems on a Volkswagen.
Do that hole just like I did over here.
Okay, so that's that bolt. There's 2 bolts up there, actually. There's 2 on the top of the transmission. The one I just showed her first was the one that was holding the shifter linkage onto the top of the transmission. I'm going to go ahead and take those 2 out. Now, you don't want to completely take all the bolts out. You can take almost all of them out, maybe leave like one end and crack it, loosen it just a little bit.
It's a mean fucking bolt.
Okay, so I hadn't even removed the lower body cover or engine cover, whatever you call that thing. I hadn't even removed that yet. So here I am removing it. Pretty straightforward. The only thing I can say here is that I'm using a screw gun and this is loosening it. But when you go to put those screws back in, make sure you have the torque limited on the screw gun because they're pretty easy to strip out. And every time I buy a car, a used car, and I have to undo and type of these clips, and there's always either a bunch of those screws missing or they're stripped out. So don't do that. Don't over tighten up. Don't strip out those clips.
Right here, here, and here. And up in here, and then here.
Obviously, you can see that I removed those inner fender covers. Here I'm taking out the lower starter bolt. There's also a bracket attached to it right there. I left the bracket attached to the cables. You can try to remove it from the connectors, but I didn't feel like messing with it. You'll see later in the video. I'll just zip tie that stuff up out of the way.
Not this pain in the ass thing on here.
Yeah, there's the bracket. Oh, and obviously you can see that that's what aftermarket twin intercooler hose right there. I'm going to eventually unclamp that and zip tie that over to the side.
Oh, yeah, this right. Shit, it's going up.
Another thing you might notice is that I usually don't use any air tools. I love the feel of tightening the bolts, and also you're not going to see me using any torque wrenches for any of this stuff. Now I wouldn't recommend that for anyone, but I have a really good feel for this. I've been working on my own cars for years, and I've never stripped out any bolts, never snapped any.
Switch to the top.
Now the only places I would definitely use a torque wrench are inside the engine, head bolts, rod bolts, you know, things like that. But external stuff, yeah,
Bolt out.
I think I know how tight to do them.
Let's see if I can just.
So there's the starter. I did unplug one of the cables that plugged into it, but I left the rest that are bolted. And all I'm going to do is just move the starter up.
Beautiful.
Zip tie it up there to the top of the engine, get it out of the way. There's the starter bolt. Okay, yeah, so there's a sway bar there. I'm pretty sure you need to take it off. Actually, it was that was one of the things that the Irwin manual said to do. But yeah, you just want to get some extra room in here.
There. Okay.
So here's the dog bone. Very straightforward. These bolts are torque to yield bolts, so these ones you want to replace because once they've been tightened, they're stressed, and then you go to put them back in again, and then they'll be overstressed, fatigued, and they may snap or they may strip out when you drive the car or when you're accelerating or something. So yeah, you don't want to mess with these ones. And actually, these ones, actually the torque to yield ones, you probably do want to use again, back to using the torque wrench on those. I don't have the spec here to tell you what it is, but if you ask me, I can probably look it up for you. I just left the original bolts in there so I could remember which size was which, because they're 3 different sizes. Here I'm going to unbolt the axle. What I do is I have somebody hold the brakes on the car and lock it.
I don't want to push on my brakes.
And then undo 1 or 2 bolts at a time, rotate it, or have them let off the brakes, rotate the axle, take out 2 more, do that again. Now, it's probably a good idea to mark these. They're marked from the factory. If you look at the axle there,
Okay, let
where
out
the
the
bolts
brake.
go through and all that, there's factory markings on there. So you might want to add a mark and bolt it back exactly the same way and keep track of
Okay, hold it.
exactly how it was bolted. I suspect that that's there might be some factory balancing involved there, but I am not sure about that. So I just put it back the best I can.
Okay, let off. Okay, hold it.
So the axle flange that this is bolted to, that this axle is bolted to, that I'm pulling, the axle off of right here, there is a hex bolt down inside in there, and you do need to loosen it. It's right in the center of that flange behind there. I believe it's either an 8 or a 9 millimeter hex, and you're going to want to loosen that up and pull that flange off. That flange is definitely in the way of the transmission moving around enough to get the transmission in and out. And that flange just pops. It just pulls right out real gentle once you remove that hex bolt.
Yeah, okay. So from underneath here, we got to get these bolts off of the axle. But there's also a heat shield on here, 2 Allen bolts coming through here. So I might drop the downpipe and take this off just to make this easier. You can see them easily in here. Okay, I'm going to take off the...
Okay, so here I guess I'm looking at removing the downpipe so that I can make some room to work on the passenger side, because the axle over there has a heat shield around it, or debris shield. I'm not sure exactly what it's supposed to be, but to get to the 2 bolts, or the 2 nuts actually, that hold it, I've got to remove the downpipe. And you want it out of there anyways. You need more room. Another reason to do this, to get this downpipe out of the way, is so that I can unbolt the LSD, the limited slip differential. And I just did the minimum here. I had to undo those, loosen those 2 bolts there on that first clamp, and then 1 at the back. And then obviously the 2 that bolt to the body right there with the orange on them. It actually has the 2 positions on there. So this downpipe is really easy to take out compared to the factory one. The factory one, as you can see, I've got another video showing it. Got to rotate that thing around to try to get it out. But this one here, once you get it unbolted out of its little clamp couplers, you can easily pull it out like this. Okay, so I was showing there that there's the heat shield that's covering the axle. Another hex bolt. I don't remember what size it is. Probably like a 10 millimeter. Yeah, they're really strange looking, those nuts. But anyways, there's only 2 of them. Loosen them up. Take that cover off so you can get to the axle bolts. Okay, so this one's the crazy one. So this axle, what do you call it? This axle flange on the passenger side you have to get through this flange all the way through the LSD back into the differential in the transmission. So you've got to have like an 8.5 inch, 9 inch extension with an 8 or 9 millimeter hex on the end of it to get to that bolt that's holding that flange up. But I mean, right here, I'm still taking off the axle bolts.
I hate this big one on here. Stupid. Okay, there it is. There it is. There it is. It's disconnected. Actually, it's this one.
Zip tie it up out of the way. Now here's the LSD. There's the control board for it right there, which is crazy that it sticks down so low underneath the car, ready to get snagged by a tree branch or something. So obviously I'm unplugging the LSD. I'm going to unplug the oil sensor plug and then pull that harness out of the way. There's a couple clips on the harness that clip it to the plastic oil pan. Just gently pry those off so you can reuse them again.
Put this over here, out of the way. Alright. To me, it looks like we do need to pull this off. Here and here. And then let's go look at the top real quick.
Okay, so there's, 2 LSD bolts here on the bottom. And there's 2 on the top.
That's easy. No problem.
Loosen those up. Now, I loosened these up first, and the LSD will move about 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch. You can wiggle it around, and I was thinking, you got to be kidding me, because I was like, there's something holding this thing in, and it's that flange way down inside there. I got a flashlight and a mirror, and I barely could tell. I was like, it looks like there's a hex bolt down in here, and sure enough there was. So once I got that out, then it was this LSD just slips right off.
Not bad. I can tweak it.
But you know, when I was putting that LSD back in, I think I got it up to, it was like somewhere around 1/4 of an inch. I think I had it was about 1/4 of an inch away from the transmission, from the differential there. And there was a little bit of gap. And I ended up having to bump it, knock it. There must be some type of little ring or clip or spring in there or whatever. Or maybe it's just the seals even. I was keeping it from going in. So I had to bump it, and it bumped in.
Okay, now I'll show this one.
So I didn't really show there, but if you, yeah, I didn't show it there, but you can see it in some of the other clips. And actually, the hex adapter that was in there actually stuck in there when I pulled that out to show that. But yeah, I just stuck the wrench and the extension right back down in there, and it bit in. But yeah, if you look at the axle there, I put 2 of the bolts back in, and then used a little pry bar and wedged it against the bolt and against the engine block to hold the axle from turning. So you saw me remove the bolt out of the center of that flange. Now I just got to take these axle bolts back off. But I already obviously was pulling on the LSD and wiggled it out. So I just wiggled it out and pulled it, I don't know, a couple inches away from the transmission just to get some clearance. So now I'm looking at the transmission mounts. Now I went ahead and loosened, I think I removed almost all of them, and I left one bolt. on each bracket, just to hold the engine up there a little bit. And I went down underneath and then took the remaining 2 bolts off. Actually, I took it off and then put it back in because I wasn't ready yet. I don't want to. You don't have the engine. I mean, the transmission just hanging there, just without anything supporting it. So I screwed one back up and here. I showed it both of them out. Okay, so then I finished loosening up these guys. And these bolts right here are all torque to yield.
Come on. Alright, so I got the axle lifted up there pretty high. I'm not sure if this is going to pop out or not. Looks like it wants to move. I got this lower bolt barely holding it in. So I'm going to try to get underneath it and bench.
So yeah, I've got
out.
one bolt underneath there.
Okay.
So here I'm pulling out the driver's side axle flange. Again, it just slips out. You just got to have room to do it. In this part of the video right here, the axle is way in the way, and you'll see that I ended up unbolting
gives us a little bit more room to pull this, but
the lower control arm bolts there where the ball joints go are attached. So this is sort of out of order. I ended up doing this a lot later because I realized I couldn't get the transmission out because the axle was in the way. So I removed those 3 bolts there and dropped so the lower control arm could drop. And then the steering arm was still holding that rotor assembly in the way, so I went ahead and unbolted that. And that's a standard type ball joint, so it's pressed in there. You know, once you tighten it, it's pressed in, so you gotta knock it. I put left the nut exposed on the end to protect the threads. Just tapped it with a sledgehammer, so it popped out. And then after that, you can see I can rotate this whole assembly. Then I went back in and zip tied the axle, but I ended up also lunging it. You'll see I've got a clip showing that here. So this part of the video here, this is all out of order. When I did this, I sort of did this. You know, later on, but anyways, I put it where it needs to be so you can see where you need to do it, where it should be done. So I put a jack up underneath the transmission just to support it, to keep it from falling out, if it even could. Move the hose out of the way. Now, here's what I actually did with that hose and the axle. You can see I've got this axle pulled way out of the way now,
right?
Bungeed over to the side.
Last night, but I dropped the lower ball joint bolts here, took this off, disconnected this, and
that's plenty of clearance. It's totally out of the way.
Out, and
do not unbolt the strut bolts
hitting
at
up
the top.
against the frame right here, and I just
You're just swinging that whole strut assembly over.
As I can to rotate that
If
transmission.
you unbolt that strut assembly, then you have to have the front alignment, the front end alignment.
It's bungeed here and hooked up underneath there.
So again, that's just pulled over.
a lot of room to work. So I'm gonna go ahead and slide the transmission.
Yeah, see, the transmission's already out, notice. So I did this after the fact.
Okay, another thing I did was I just pulled this bracket over,
Before I was
pinched
putting
this
the
over,
transmission back in.
and I'm getting,
But there
all
again,
this stuff out of
I
my
zip
damn way.
tied that bracket and the hose
So I
over
can,
just to get it out of the way. So I didn't do that originally when I pulled the tranny out, but so I had to fight it a little bit. But if you do what I'm showing here, that's this. It makes it so much easier. So I couldn't show you how I took the transmission out because it was too damn dark. Couldn't see anything in the video.
Here we go.
And so I'm going to show you how I put it in, because all you have to do is basically reverse this. But the trick is you've got to rotate the differential of the transmission up to the sky, lift up the transmission there, right, and then rotate it back around, back down, rotate that differential down while you're trying to line up the transmission spline into the engine. So I mean, this is how I usually do it. I have a jack there in case I get tired. I can jack the jack up and hold the transmission. See, boom, there it is, lined up, popped on. All right, I just noticed that in the video where, in the portion where I was removing the pressure plate from the flywheel, that you couldn't really see this tool very well. So I wanted to show this. And this tool, I bought this from HS Tuning with the clutch. I don't remember how much. I think it was like 25 bucks or something. You'll see it when you go online. But there's a part number on here, 3067. I believe that this is the real dealer tool. This part number was listed in the Irwin manual, and it looks like what they have drawn out. So this is a pretty helpful tool. I would buy it if I was you, and you're keeping your car. You're going to have to do more of these clutch installs, or you have to go back and change your friction material or something. But anyways, yeah, obviously you slide the shaft either end, depending on which direction the flywheel's going to try to rotate, into one of the engine case holes, and lock the teeth on the onto the flywheel, and it'll keep it from rotating, and you can loosen your bolts up. So yeah, I would highly recommend purchasing one of these. All right, so it got dark by the time I got that transmission off, and that's why you couldn't see anything in the video. That's why there's no video showing me removing it. But here's where I was at the end of the day. And you just got to remove those bolts holding the pressure plate on, and use that little tool I was just talking about. Make sure you hold that pressure plate. If you undo those bolts, it could pop up and hit you in the face.
Okay, is it?
Mine was a little bit tight. Had to get a screwdriver, give it a little bit of pry, and then it just popped off.
All right, cool. It's exciting. Okay.
There was no cracks in there, no grooves in there.
What's up? I get this ready, huh?
A little bit of maybe just some discoloring, but no, it was all good.
Cool. Well, that's it for tonight. Awesome.
See. Okay, so here I'm just roughing up that surface with some plumber's cloth, emery cloth, and I did a lot more sanding than what's shown in this video. But basically, just trying to get that glazed surface so that it was a little bit rough.
All right, this is all some of the stuff that came in that kit from HS Tuning. And throw out bearing assembly. There's the actual part number for reference. Looks like axle bolts, engine mount bolts. Those are all torque to yield, one-time use. Some more nuts. Here's the pressure plate. Notice there's only one set of numbers on here. I don't know if somebody took the numbers off or what, because it looks like it's brushed. But that's the RS clutch. Pressure plate. And here's the disc. This might just be a standard disc. Let's look. Yeah, sacks. Here's the original disc. Sacks. Let's see here. I can find a gearbox side, Sachs 1.8. Huh. Yeah, this side doesn't say nothing, but looks like it's pretty close. Not much material on that though. Huh. That doesn't look like there's much material here before that's gonna start crying. That's not much at all. Shit. That's crazy. I think this one was thicker. Alright, anyways. Here we go. Here's the old pressure plate. So you notice it does have numbers all on it. See, this looks like this has been sanded down. Interesting. I don't know. You can see this was grinding down. Looks like it was biting a lot on the edges. Looks like it's been glazed, superheated. Yeah, it was slipping pretty bad. That under hard acceleration. Alright, I just wiped this with a little bit of emery cloth, just barely, just hit it a teeny bit. I don't want to take down any of the little grooves that are in it, but just make sure there's nothing on it. Sometimes there's like oils and sprays and sealants and like clear coat crap on them, all kinds of shit. So you want to make sure you get it off. And then I use some brake cleaner on it. Just make sure that it's all clean.
Alright, so these 3 bolts that hold in this slave assembly, throw-out bearing assembly, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, they had Loctite on them, and they are like totally were a pain to take out. For what I would have expected them to be, anyways. But again, that's an interesting setup. Oh, also I had pressure wash and brake cleaned that housing all out, washed it all up.
Crazy, huh?
I was just looking at them, make sure they look the same.
All right.
put some Loctite, just a little bit of Loctite back on the bolts.
I'll put a little bit more, throw the locker back on here. And obviously it was biting, gripping very hard, so it's not like I need a bunch of this stuff. Alright. That's ridiculous. Man, that's biting. Okay. Okay. Alright, that's it for that. So it says.
All right, so I also
Alright, what does it say here?
brake cleaned the flywheel really
Gearbox
well.
side.
Got every little bit of
So,
gunk out of there.
just through.
And there's my my tool, the generic clutch alignment tool. It's got a couple different attachments to help fit the different flywheels.
Which way does it go? Which
You got to
way
make
does
sure
it
you
go?
get this aligned correctly. Really, there should only be one way to do it. There's 3 pins on the flywheel, and you've got to find the 3 holes that they go through clutch plate. And if you get those right, then you'll see that the bolt holes will line up. If something's not lining up, then you've got it wrong.
Is that it?
Now, what was interesting with
like
this pressure plate was that, and I had heard this before, that this pressure plate has, I guess, smaller dowel holes in it from the factory for the Audi, and supposedly they have to be drilled out to fit the GTI pin sizes. So I think they needed to drill them a little bit looser. It was a little bit too snug. I actually had to tap it with a sledgehammer there, and then try to get one screw in, then tap it a little bit more and get another screw in. And then once I got the screws in, then I was able to cross pattern tighten those bolts up and draw the pressure plate to the flywheel. When you're doing this too, make sure that you can wiggle your clutch alignment tool, because if you've got it binding, you want to just keep making sure that it's not binding, and that you're trying to keep that clutch disc as centered as possible.
All right, I've got it moved over here, and I'm going to slide underneath, but I put this flange back in here just to keep the fluid from leaking out. But when I go to lift this up and into the car, I've got to have this out. So I'm going to get and pull it back out.
All right, so here's me putting it back in again. That's how I do it. But yeah, you got to lift the differential towards the sky, fit it up around the subframe, get it up in there, up over on top of the subframe, and then let the differential rotate back towards the back of the car. And so I'm going to try to rotate, trying to also get the transmission shaft to line up. Really right there, I'm sort of just trying to get the right angle on it.
Hitting there.
This thing's going to drop down. Transfer case. One of the things I didn't mention too is that I had to lift the engine up a little bit to get that all to line up nice and easy. But when you get it all correct, it should just sort of plop on. Now, when I did this, though, the transmission didn't want to completely,
I got this all good.
flushly seat up against the engine block when pushing it by hand. And I think that's just due to the weight of the transmission and just not being able to support it at exactly the right angle to keep it held up against the engine. So I slowly put the bolts in and spun them by hand. Would lift the transmission by hand and work the bolts around by hand, and it drew right up. And it's all put together now, and there's no problems. So actually, at this point here, you just want to reverse everything that I just showed you in the rest of the video to put everything back together again. And I can tell you, too, after installing all this, that at least right now with the clutch brand new, the engagement point is like, man, it is so close to the floor. It's crazy. So it's like as soon as you start to lift off the pedal, the clutch instantly engages, and I mean, it grabs hard. So so far, I'm really impressed with this clutch. So I think this was a good buy. So I hope this video was helpful. For those of you who've never seen the amount of work that it takes to replace the clutch, maybe you learned something, maybe you did, maybe you could teach me something. So, that's all there is to it. Please like the video. And until next time, this is Rad Fox signing off.